June 20, 1992, a humid Houston night. The neighborhood of Brownstone Lane was quiet, until the sound of gunfire shattered the silence. When police arrived, what they found inside that small brick home would haunt even the most seasoned detectives. 6 people had been tied up, gagged and shot execution style. 4 were dead, among them 32-year-old Jose Tovar, his friend Frank Farias, Audrey Brown and 19-year-old Jessica Quiñones, who was 7 months pregnant. 2 others, including Jose's wife Rachel, somehow survived, their memories burned with horror. The motive? Police said it was a drug-related robbery gone wrong. The suspects, 3 men, Marion Red Dudley, Antonia Tony Dunson and Arthur Brown Jr., names that would soon be known across Texas. All 3 were accused of storming the house looking for money and cocaine. Dudley and Brown would be sent to death row, Dunson sentenced to life in prison. But as the years passed, questions began to rise. Did Texas get it right? Brown insisted he wasn't even there that night, that he was innocent of the bloodbath that haunted Brownstone Lane. Yet after 3 decades on death row, the state prepared to end his life. To understand the full scope of this story, let's go back to where it all began. But first, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell for more jaw-dropping true crime stories. Now, let's begin. Arthur Brown Jr. is born on August 14, 1970, into a world marked by poverty, instability, and hardship. From an early age, his life is shaped by constant movement and uncertainty, as his family drifts between Los Angeles, California, and Tuscaloosa, Alabama, searching for stability that never comes. School records and court filings reveal that Arthur's upbringing is riddled with neglect, and some reports indicate he may have been exposed to alcohol in the womb, a factor that affects his cognitive development. By the time he enters school, it becomes clear he struggles in ways other children do not. Psychologists evaluate him with an IQ near 70, placing him in the range once classified as educable mentally retarded, meaning he can learn simple tasks but has limited reasoning and comprehension skills. Teachers describe him as quiet, polite, and withdrawn, often appearing confused or unsure of how to navigate daily life. He is placed in special education classes, where he receives basic academic support, but his environment outside school offers little guidance or stability. Arthur's childhood home life provides few resources or structure. Poverty means basic needs often go unmet, and he lacks the supervision and support necessary for healthy development. Moving between cities and schools, he never experiences a true sense of belonging or stability. As he grows older, his cognitive limitations and social naivety make him vulnerable to influence, manipulation, and poor decisions. This early life shapes who Arthur Brown Jr. is and establishes the context in which the events of June 1992 unfold. Inside the modest home at 4631 Brownstone Lane, life appears ordinary, almost mundane. Jose Tovar, 32, and his wife Rachel have created a small haven amid the challenges of their Houston neighborhood, hardworking, connected to their community, yet quietly involved in the small-time sale of cocaine to supplement their income. On the evening of June 20, 1992, their home is filled with laughter, conversation, and the simple comfort of friendship. Frank Farias, only 17, sits among them, full of youth and hope, a boy standing on the edge of adulthood with dreams he has yet to realize. Audrey Brown, 21, radiates energy and warmth, her presence a reminder of life and vitality. And Jessica Quiñones, 19, carrying her first child, smiles nervously, her excitement for the future mingled with the vulnerability of her youth. The atmosphere is casual, warm, and seemingly safe, a moment of ordinary life, ordinary joy, on a night that will become anything but ordinary. But as the clock approaches 11 p.m., that fragile sense of security is violently shattered. Neighbors hear muffled cries followed by the sharp, terrifying sound of gunfire. Panic spreads across the street as calls to police are made, and officers arrive within minutes, only to be met with a nightmare beyond comprehension. Inside, 6 people lie bound with duct tape, their faces frozen in terror. For our dead, Jose Tovar, Frank Farias, Audrey Brown, and Jessica Quiñones, the young pregnant woman whose unborn child is lost with her. 2 others, Rachel Tovar and Nicholas Cortez, cling to life, each shot in the head, their survival a miracle amid the carnage. In the haze of pain and shock, the survivors whisper fragments of names, Red, or Tony, the only clues to the identity of the intruders who tore through their lives. Investigators later confirmed that the 3 men entered the house intending to steal cash and cocaine. They were armed with multiple firearms, including a .38 caliber revolver and a .22 caliber pistol, leaving behind a scene of calculated violence. The home that had once echoed with laughter and friendship is transformed into a crime scene burned into the memory of a community. The horror of that night is more than just statistics. It is the terror of lives interrupted, futures stolen, and innocence destroyed in an instant. It is a night that forever binds the names of victims and perpetrators into a story of tragedy, survival, and justice that will unfold over the decades to come. Detectives immediately begin piecing together the chaos of Brownstone Lane, combing through evidence, interviewing witnesses, and tracing the movements of the three men whose names had been whispered by the barely conscious survivors: Red, or Tony. Using these clues, investigators link the nicknames to three young men from Alabama: Marion Red Dudley, Arthur Squirt Brown Jr., and Antonia Tony Dunson, a trio with a history of petty crime and a dangerous familiarity with drugs and weapons. Police discover that the men had traveled from Alabama to Houston days earlier, ostensibly to conduct a cocaine deal. When the transaction collapses, frustration turns into violence. Detectives later conclude that the three decided to take what they wanted by force, and eliminate anyone who could identify them. The planning may have been impromptu, but the execution is chillingly methodical, leaving behind a scene of bound victims, gunshot wounds, and devastation that shakes the community. Through witness statements, vehicle records, and tip-offs from acquaintances, authorities track Arthur Brown Jr. to Alabama, where he is arrested on October 23, 1992, nearly 4 months after the massacre. Within days, Marion Dudley and Antonia Dunson are also taken into custody. Each is charged with capital murder, facing the full weight of Texas law for the brutal, premeditated killings. Investigators pore over ballistics, fingerprints, and crime scene details, while survivors' testimonies provide the crucial link identifying each suspect. The trio's arrival in Houston, their apparent motive, and their violent actions are laid bare, leaving little doubt in the minds of law enforcement that these three men are responsible. What began as a small-time drug scheme has escalated into one of Houston's most shocking mass murders, setting the stage for a high-profile trial and decades of legal battles. The courtroom in Houston is tense, silent except for the scribbling of court reporters and the shuffle of papers, as the trials for the Brownstone Lane massacre begin in 1993, a case that has gripped the city with horror and disbelief for months. Prosecutors meticulously lay out their case, presenting Brown as the orchestrator of one of the most gruesome crimes in Texas history. They describe him as cold, calculating, and ruthless, emphasizing survivor testimonies, police reports, and circumstantial evidence. According to the prosecution, Brown, nicknamed Squirt, drove from Alabama with his accomplices Marion Dudley, Red, and Antonia Dunson, Tony, planning to steal cocaine and cash. When the deal went wrong, they allegedly decided to eliminate any witnesses, binding, gagging, and shooting 6 people in a single night, including a pregnant 19-year-old, Jessica Quiñones, whose unborn child dies in the attack. The defense takes a markedly different approach, painting Brown as a vulnerable, intellectually disabled young man with the mind of a child, easily manipulated by the older, more dominant Dudley and Dunson. They present school records, psychological evaluations, and testimonies from family members, highlighting his low IQ, limited understanding of right and wrong, and a lifetime of neglect and instability. The attorneys argue that Brown could not have fully comprehended the gravity of the events or the consequences of his involvement. Eyewitness testimony becomes a central point of contention. Rachel Tovar and Nicholas Cortez, the 2 surviving victims, identify Brown as one of the shooters during a police lineup, though years later some claim they were pressured to select him. The defense counters that no physical evidence, no fingerprints on weapons, no gunshot residue, directly links Brown to the crime scene. Prosecutors bolster their case by referencing statements allegedly made by Brown to his sister, in which he admitted involvement, though no official recording exists. Courtroom dynamics are intense. Prosecutors rely on dramatic storytelling and survivor testimony to sway the jury, while defense attorneys question the credibility of witnesses, highlight procedural inconsistencies, and emphasize Brown's diminished mental capacity. Expert psychologists testify about the impact of his upbringing, poverty, and cognitive limitations, offering a portrait of a man shaped by circumstance as much as by choice. After weeks of testimony, legal arguments, and careful deliberation, the jury returns verdicts that determine the fates of the 3 men. Arthur Brown Jr. is convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death in 1993, beginning a decades-long stay on Texas death row. Marion Butler Red Dudley, found equally culpable as a principal in the murders, is also sentenced to death and later executed in 2006. Antonia "Tony" Dunson, viewed as less directly involved, receives life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he will never be released but sparing him execution. The trial leaves an indelible mark on the families of the victims, the community, and the public. It highlights the complexities of assigning culpability in violent crimes, the interplay of mental disability in capital cases, and the often stark consequences of legal strategies in the Texas criminal justice system. The verdicts cement the legal outcomes, but the emotional and ethical questions surrounding the case will reverberate for decades, fueling debate over justice, fairness, and the death penalty itself. Arthur Brown Jr. enters the gates of the Polunsky Unit in Livingston, Texas, stepping into a world of isolation, confinement, and relentless monotony, where each day blends into the next and the shadow of death never leaves. Over the course of almost 3 decades, he lives in a small, austere cell, spending long hours in reflection, prayer, and routine. Guards and fellow inmates note a profound transformation. The impulsive, confused young man who was convicted in 1993 becomes quiet, deeply religious, and introspective, seeking meaning and solace within the confines of his limited world. Outside his cell, Brown's legal team fights tirelessly, filing appeal after appeal, arguing that he is intellectually disabled, with IQ tests consistently measuring around 70, and that executing him would violate constitutional protections. Defense attorneys also claim that prosecutors withheld key evidence during the original trial, evidence that could have called into question eyewitness identifications, the alleged confessions, and other aspects of the prosecution's case. Each petition presents psychological evaluations, school records, and expert testimony to show that Brown lacked the cognitive capacity to fully understand or participate in the crimes attributed to him. Despite decades of persistent legal efforts, courts repeatedly reject his appeals, ruling that the evidence against him, survivor testimony, circumstantial details, and corroborating statements, is sufficient to uphold the original conviction and death sentence. 3 decades on death row pass slowly, with appeals exhausted, hope fading, yet Brown remains steadfast, quietly enduring life in isolation while clinging to faith. His time at Polunsky is a story not just of confinement, but of human resilience, the complexities of mental disability, and the ethical questions surrounding capital punishment, all leading to the final chapter of his life, his execution at the Huntsville Unit. After nearly 3 decades on death row, the life of Arthur Brown Jr. reaches its final, irrevocable chapter. On March 9, 2023, the state of Texas formally sets his execution date, ending a long legal battle filled with appeals, petitions, and questions about intellectual disability and wrongful conviction. In the hours leading up to the execution, Brown remains calm and reflective, reportedly reading and praying in his Polunsky Unit cell, preparing mentally for the end that awaits him at the Huntsville Unit, where executions are carried out. At 6:30 p.m., Brown is escorted into the execution chamber, led past the cold steel and sterile surroundings that mark the final threshold of life. He is strapped to the gurney as witnesses, including journalists and family members of the victims, look on in solemn silence. Although Texas abolished the tradition of special last meals in 2011, the prison serves the standard menu for the day, which included barbecue brisket, mashed potatoes, green beans, bread, tea, and banana pudding, though Brown only ate a small portion. As the lethal injection begins, Brown speaks, his voice steady and defiant. "What's happening here tonight is not justice. It's murder of an innocent man. I didn't do it." The state of Texas will kill a second innocent man for a crime that happened in 1992. His words echo through the chamber, a final plea that underscores the controversy surrounding his conviction and mental capacity. At 6:55 p.m., the medical team pronounces him dead. The room holds a tense silence before witnesses are released. Outside, the aftermath resonates deeply. Rachel Tovar, one of the survivors and a witness to the trial decades earlier, remarks, "It's been 31 years. Justice was finally served." The execution closes the chapter on a story of unimaginable violence, decades of confinement, and the complex, often painful intersection of justice, mental disability, and human consequence. For Arthur Brown Jr., the journey that began in a troubled childhood and ended in a death row cell is now complete, leaving behind a legacy of questions, reflection, and a haunting reminder of how one night in 1992 changed countless lives forever. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the Arthur Brown Jr. case. We want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from, and let us know what you think about this case. Do you believe justice was served, or do you think there's more to the story? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping true crime stories and updates from cases like this. Your voice matters. Join the conversation and let's discuss.